know your name, I swear I do. It's on the tip of my tongue. Sorry, what did you say? And I've known you for how long? Your face is so familiar, but no name comes to mind. Please, can you remind me if you'll be so kind? Staring out into space, asking God to hear my case. Trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last?
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay. So welcome. For those of you that are new, I always like to tell you a little bit about us because we're always getting new listeners. Bottom line, Alzheimer Speaks was created because my own mother went on the journey of dementia for 30 years, and I walked alongside her and just really felt a need to raise voices and connect people to resources, tools, and tips and products that are so badly needed by those affected by this disease. And so that's really how we got created. Bottom line, Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort around the world. We also help companies expand their brand footprint by leveraging our content in our platforms. So again, people can find the information they're looking for. And we would be nothing without you, our loyal listeners. You see, your likes, your clicks, your shares have just pushed our information out around the world far beyond what we ever imagined could happen. And so I can't thank you enough, even though those things take a very little time while you're listening, to share it on Facebook or your Twitter tribe or your LinkedIn colleagues, wherever it goes. It really is a powerful connection. You see, people in our spheres of influence are dealing with dementia, but many times haven't reached out. They're not comfortable. And so the more information they can see about resources, tips, and tools, the more likely they're going to grab it when they need it. So please continue to do that because you are a powerful force within our community. And you've gotten us recognized by Oprah, Maria Shriver, Dr. Oz, AARP, just to name a few. I would also like you to consider being a guest on our show. You see, we talk to everybody, people that are diagnosed with a form of dementia, people caring for someone who's been diagnosed, or maybe you're just having symptoms and haven't been formally diagnosed. Professionals of all sorts, from we've had Harvard research on the show to memory care communities, to singers and songwriters, movie directors, artists, you name it. So feel free to reach out to me. You can just go to alzheimerspeaks.com and click on the Contact Us button in the upper right-hand corner, and I'd love to talk to you about being a guest on the show. Now, before I introduce our guest, I'm just going to give a shout-out to a couple companies. One is called Purple Table Reservations. That's purpletables.com. They are an organization that is trying to train restaurants to be able to serve and provide great, comfortable service to those who dine with them. And if you know of restaurants in your area, please have them check out purpletables.com. They also have an app to find out who's located in your city. And to be honest, they have more needs than they have restaurants at this time because they're just starting out. So please help them spread the word. That's purpletables.com. And then the memory cafes are near and dear to my heart. And you can find out if there's one in your area by going to memorycafedirectory.com. That's memorycafedirectory.com. And that system is developed and provided by Calendar Cards, which is a memory system that helps people manage their everyday lives. And Calendar Cards is both with K's, Calendar and Cards. So go and check them out as well. And then last, I want to reach out to and say hi and give them a little boost is Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. They take a holistic approach to care, and they just do a phenomenal job. So if you are looking at eating habits and meditation and exercise, check out the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, and you can find them at alzheimersprevention.org. That's alzheimersprevention.org. So let me introduce our guest today. Linda Burhan is a national speaker on caregiver advocacy, and she is also the author of Good Night and God Bless, which is a heartfelt story about joy and challenges about caring for a parent. She's also written Connecting Caregivers, which answers the questions that you didn't even know you needed to ask. And anyone who has been in a caregiver role knows that there are plenty of those things that pop up. You just don't know what you just don't know. Now, Linda has also facilitated over 1,500 support groups and workshops for caregivers. She shares the lessons that she's learned along with coping skills and tools with caregivers, and she has a blog and a radio show which we will learn much more about from her. Welcome, Linda. How are you doing today?
I am joyful and grateful to be here today, and I am honored because, Lori, you're like a pioneer in this stuff. I watched you for a long time before I did some of my stuff, and I just want to say I'm so grateful for you.
Oh, thank you. It's all of us working together, and the need is so great.
Yep.
There can't ever be enough of us, that's for sure.
No.
And I'm thrilled to have you join us today. But before we get started with our line of questions, I always like to ask my guests so that we can share this with our audience. Have you been personally affected by dementia in your own circle of family or friends?
Well, I have to tell you, I took care of my mom. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. It probably wasn't until after my mom passed away that I realized she also had dementia. She was acting differently. She stopped reading. I did everything for her. Different things like her telling me there were squirrels under her bed that weren't there, but I didn't know anything about that. And we just focused on the cancer. So it wasn't until after my mom passed away that I realized, oh, my goodness, she did have dementia. But at that time, I just danced in that circle trying to figure it out, figure out whatever I needed to figure out that my mom would feel okay.
I think that's what many of us do. And the other thing that's really easy is when someone's got a chronic illness, everything just gets blamed on that, no matter what, because it's, we think it's new, and a lot of times it isn't always new. It's just taken on maybe a different form, or maybe it's been their personality all along, but maybe it's upped a few notches,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what it was with my mother. We just all of a sudden upped a few notches who she was before.
I want to talk about caregiver burnout because that is so prevalent. I mean, you just hear about it all the time. I was just talking with a colleague on LinkedIn, and she sent me a news feed from the Denver airport that talked about a caregiver who had put their loved one with dementia on an airplane, sent them to Denver. Supposedly, family on the other side was supposed to pick them up, never did. And the person ended up in the hospital. So, I mean, people just get burnt out. We hear about this happening in the hospitals where people will just be dumped off, and family will say they're going for a cup of coffee and they don't come back. And a lot of people who haven't cared for somebody are just shocked and disgusted with this, yet it happens. And it's one of those things, I think, that builds up, and then all of a sudden, boom, people just explode because they don't feel supported. What do you think somebody can do about caregiver burnout?
I just want to say the first thing is the caregiver has to identify themselves as a caregiver. Before I could help any caregivers, they had to identify themselves as a caregiver because it was, I am the faithful daughter. I am the good spouse. I was like, well, do you do this? Do you do that? Do you do this? They're like, yeah. I said, you're a caregiver. So I think it was hard to even help the caregivers until I helped them identify that they were caregivers. And the first thing, of course, I'm going to say is they need to take care of themselves. You know the whole story. You got to put the oxygen mask on your face first. My sister repeatedly told me that when I was taking care of my mother, and I was like, yeah. Yep. And I think the big thing is with caregivers is getting help and accepting help. So I talk about something that's called the AAA dilemma. Caregivers don't ask for help, they don't accept help, and they don't acknowledge themselves. And I think what happens is the caregivers, they're in this little tornado. I remember being in that tornado and just running and going, I can do it, not even knowing what I was doing. I can do it. And if someone would ask if they could help me, I would say to them, no, I'm okay. And I think part of the reason was in my head, I'm like, I'm still in that tornado, so I'm like, what can you help me with? Are you going to, like, take my mother to the doctor? Are you going to bathe her? Are you going to... So I suggest to caregivers that they take a little bit of time to just sit down and write a list of some things that they can accept help with.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it in your pocket or by your front door, so when your neighbor comes over, or your friend from church, whoever it is, and they say, is there anything I can do to help you? You just pull out your list.
I think that's a really interesting concept because I don't think most of us realize we don't accept help. I mean, we don't.
Right.
And so to sit down and consciously think, okay, what can I let somebody do in my inner circle? You know, that's a tough thing, especially when you talked about people not identifying as a caregiver. You know, they're a daughter, they're a husband, they're a wife, you know, they're a son, they're a friend,
Right.
whatever they are. And yet they know deep down that they have this resolve and this responsibility to take good care. And I think they feel so isolated because we all presume that everybody's looking at us thinking you got to do this alone or you got to do better. You got to, you know, there's a whole list of you gotta's.
There's the other flip side of it, that sometimes the caregivers think, I'm the only one that can do this. This is my responsibility. This is my spouse. This is my child. This is my whoever it is. No, it takes a village. Just like it takes a village to bring up a child, it takes a village to take care of a senior. And you know, and I want to say the one thing, if caregivers are listening right now, so if you decide to make that list or whatever, be specific too, because what happens is your neighbor says, hey, could I help you? And you say, could you come and spend some time with my mom? Sometime never happens. But if you say, can you come over at Tuesday at 2 o'clock while I go get a haircut and spend a couple hours with my mother, they're going to go, yeah, or if not Tuesday, Thursday. Because, you know, after my mom passed away, I was in the supermarket one day, and a woman said to me, how you doing, Linda? And I said, I'm doing okay. And she said to me, you know, I'm sick of hearing that. And I just looked at her. And she said to me, she said, when you took care of your mother, you stole my joy. And I said, I did what? And she said, you stole my joy. She said, I could see you swimming in quicksand, and every time I asked if I could help you, you said, no, I'm okay. You stole my joy, Linda. So anybody who's listening to this today, don't steal someone's joy. They want to help you. That's why they're asking you.
I think people know deep down how it makes us all feel when we're able to help somebody. It makes us feel good, but we don't, for whatever reason, we don't frame it like that when we're the receiver. And that's a conversation that has to be heard loud and clear on both sides. And I'm so glad that your friend, you know, said that to you, because it sounds like that was a real pivotal point for you going, oh, my gosh.
It was. Well, I have to tell you, another time I got an email from a woman. She said, I came to hear you speak, and I thought about what you said about making a list or whatever. She said, and I thought about it for a couple of days, and I made a list. I only put one thing on my list. And if anyone asks if they can help me, I say, if you can come over any afternoon between 2 and 4 and let me take a nap, that would be wonderful. And her next line was, and I'm pleased as punch to let you know that I'm napping 7 days a week, and my husband is getting 7 different visitors that have stopped coming.
That's
because
beautiful.
We keep saying no to everybody, they don't come.
Just like you said, it was a specific task at a specific time on a specific day. And you know, people clamor to want to help, you know, because they can see it on our faces and in our body language. You know, we put that Stepford wife smile on, but it's not cutting it. People who know us know. And even people that don't know us can read it. You know?
Get it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I got an email last week from a woman, and she said, I've been listening to your radio show for 6 months, but I'm a slow learner. She said, my husband's dementia is to the point where I can't even go to church anymore. I can't take him to church with me. His behavior is just not good. She said, and I've already given up everything, Linda. Church is my last thing, and I want to go to church. She said, so my neighbor's been asking me for a long time, is there anything I can do to help you? She said, and he's Jewish. So she said, I went over and I asked him, do you think you could hang out with my husband on Sundays when I go to church? He said, I would love to do that. So she goes to church the first Sunday, and she comes home, and they're playing dominoes, and they tell her, go away. We're busy. So now she gets 3 hours every Sunday morning.
Love
That's
that
huge.
story. And I know I was the same way with my mom. I I thought I had it down. I had the routine
Yeah.
down. I knew their needs, and
Mhm.
it wasn't until after my dad died that I had this discussion with my brothers, and I realized how much they missed out on because they didn't come around. And so one of the things I talk about a lot with people when I'm out on the circuit is, we do push people away, or I thought I was trying to pull them in, because I don't know if you get this, but I hear this a lot. People say, how do I fix my siblings? How do I fix my family? How do I get them more involved? And we don't even know that we're pushing them away because of the way we're acting, because we're trying to make them be like us, and that's not comfortable for them. And what you just pointed out about, the friend coming over and like, get out of here, we're good, that you're getting that respite as a care partner, and they are getting filled, because nobody wants to be tied to anybody 24/7. I don't care who you are,
the person you're caring for wants to say to you, go away. Give me a break for a couple hours without you.
I was going to say, in your AAA dilemma, you talk about asking for help and being really specific, and then opening up to accepting it when it comes, and then acknowledging themselves, as a caregiver or as part of that team. And that is just such a nice equation for people to really sit down and look at. And I love that you talk about asking for help, and then and asking that really specific question of, what are you comfortable letting someone else do? Because we're not all comfortable letting certain things go, and that's okay too.
Someone can come in and help you while you're home, because some people feel like, I can't leave my home. I can't just like walk out and have someone come in and take care of my loved one. But you could be in the house with them, and you could be in another room just chilling,
just taking that nap,
so that you feel like Exactly, or just sitting, just, whatever it is, going out in your garden, walking your dog.
No, you work a lot with caregiver support groups, and, I'm assuming that you feel that helps because you've done so many of them. Can you let our audience know what types of groups you deal with, and why you feel that that's such a profound link for them to connect with?
I think it's so important because caregivers do become isolated, and caregivers do feel that they're alone, and caregivers, if you don't have someone to talk with that is in the same situation as you, if your neighbor, your friend, or whoever it is has never dealt with someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, has never dealt with someone with a terminal illness, they don't get it till they're in it, and that's okay. When you come to the support group, there are people in there that get it because they're in the same boat as you. And I can remember one time in particular, a woman came to a support group, and she just was very quiet. She was like weeping most of the support group. And all of a sudden at the end she blurted out, my husband thinks I'm cheating on him. I've been married for 64 years. I would never do that. Please. And some of the other women in the group that had been there for a while said, honey, that's part of the disease. I remember when my husband went through that, and you just saw the woman go,
Not
and that's
alone.
something she probably would have never said in her church or to her neighbor or to anyone else. But here was a safe place with people that get it.
Now, when you were caring for your loved one, did you go to a support group?
No, I didn't find out what respite care was till I was in my bereavement group.
Okay, so like me, I did the same thing. I went by accident. I went to go hear somebody else speak because, I didn't have time, and I was kind of in this realm, and so you kind of think you know it all. And then when I went, I was like, dang, my speaker's not here that I wanted to hear. And then I'm like, well, I can't leave now, so I'm going to sit in on the group.
Right.
And I kind of thought I was like outside the circle. And then it was like, I am so in this circle. It's not even funny.
Exactly.
And I, as a professional in the industry, should have identified. And I didn't identify myself as belonging. And I remember them
totally different.
Yep, they asked a really simple question. It was, what do you miss the most? And I just burst out crying, going, oh, I miss a hug. My mom can't move her arms anymore, and she can't hug me.
Right.
And it was like, okay, I'm coming every week.
Exactly.
And it was incredibly profound how you could let go of your vulnerability and find support and hear those answers, just like you said about, my husband thinks I'm cheating, just hearing from others going, me too, been there, know how much that hurts.
Yeah.
Just that validation. Again, the support group's not going to fix it. They're not going to make it go away, but they're going to offer ways to deal with it and put it in perspective.
You're going to learn tips there you will not learn anywhere else. You're not going to learn it from the book. You're not going to learn it from anyone else. You know, at one point I was doing a bunch of support groups, and I would just have like one gentleman in each group. It was mostly women, and there'd be one guy here and one guy there, and one guy was coming for a long time, and he said, Linda, do you think we could do a group just for men? We have some different issues. And I was like, yeah, we can do that. And he's like, do you think you can handle us? I said, I'll do the best I can. And we named the group Caregiver Clubhouse after Spanky and our gang. And it was a wonderful, it was a great group. And there was 5 guys that came all the time. And every now and then some would come, other men would come for a while and phase out. You know how it goes. But it was always my main 5 guys. And one day I went to do one of my groups, and none of my 5 guys showed up that day. A new man showed up, but none of my 5 guys, and I was very concerned because I had never ever happened before. So I spent time with the other gentleman, and then I called them up, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? Well, 3 of them went fishing, and 2 of them went golfing together because that's what you told us to do, Linda. I go, not on the day of my group. How could you do that? But you know what? It's like 5 years later, and all of their wives have passed away, and 2 of the gentlemen have passed away, but 3 of them still go fishing together.
That's nice. The friendships are so deep that develop. I have found in those groups. I facilitate more the memory cafes for people with dementia and their care partners, and you know they refer to themselves as family. You know, it just. Yeah. They say things that they don't even tell, you know, anybody else outside that group, and they're major.
Because where no one else understands, they do.
Yep.
Where no one else that's in that outer circle understands, the people in the group do.
Yeah. I had one lady, kind of like yours, who, you know, her husband thought she was cheating. This one was the man had dementia, and the woman was caring for him. And they went to go to bed that night, and her husband, Bernie, gave her this big hug, and he said, you're a really nice lady, but you're going to have to leave because I'm married. And Mary Ann, you know, her heart melted because she knew how much he loved her. And yet her heart broke because he didn't realize that was her. And so the whole group was like, what'd you do? And she said, well, I went in the spare bedroom and I went to sleep. And then she said, well, no, I didn't. She said, I stayed up all night praying that in the morning he would know me. And they're like, well, did he? And she said, yeah, we were okay. And Bertie's sitting right next to her, and he's like, did that happen? Did I really do that? And she said, yeah. You know, she patted his leg and said, yeah, you did, honey. And he leans over and he kisses her. And what was so amazing, though, Linda, was every couple in that group, and there was probably 7 different couples, all said they had that happen to them and they had never told a soul before.
Right.
And you could just feel this relief in all of them, again, that they're not alone, that this is part of the disease, and, you know, they learned how to handle it from each other if it happens again. I think the other beauty with these support groups is people learn that they do have a lot of knowledge and that they can help somebody else out, because I think we all
and they feel so good about that.
Yeah, and I think everybody walks in thinking, oh, I don't know a dang thing, and they're beating themselves up, and then they realize, I have learned, I can share, and that's a really cool thing, too, that support groups can offer.
Well, I got to tell you a great story. Can I tell you one great story?
Oh, please.
So there was a man who was coming to my support group for quite a while. His wife had Alzheimer's and lived in a community. And he calls me one day and he goes to me, it's over. And I thought she passed away. And he said, no, I went to visit her last week and she said, I don't know you, you old man. Get away from me. Don't come near me. He said, I went back 3 days in a row and it happened every time. He goes, I heard this could happen, Linda, but not to me. So on the 4th day when he went back to community, he said, you're just agitating her too much. We would really suggest that you just not come for a little while. So I meet him for lunch, and what can I do? Cry with him. And he calls me like 2 weeks later, and he goes, I have the best news in the world. I'm like, lay it on me. He said, Linda, I've been laying in bed at night trying to figure out a solution. They've been married 68 years. He said, and all that's going through my head was your voice, Linda, saying, go into her world. She can't go into yours. Go into her world. So the guy has a full head of white hair. The next morning he went to the salon. He had it dyed black and cut into a crew cut like he wore in the day. He went on, bought himself a pair of blue jeans and a white T-shirt and rolled up a pack of cigarettes in his sleeve and found the surfer's cross that she gave him when they were 22 years old. And now he's her boyfriend and she's in love with him.
Oh.
Yikes.
Got my eyes a little watery on that one.
What a chance he took. It might not have worked, but it did. And I'm telling you, Lori, he looks so darn cute.
That's a fantastic story. You probably had a few others thinking that he was their boyfriend, too.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
I want to make sure that we have time to talk about your book, Good Night and God Bless. Can you tell us a little bit about that? It's about celebrating, love and laughter and lessons of loss. But what made you decide to write it and maybe share like a favorite chapter or story in there with us, if you don't mind?
Okay, well, I'll give you a kind of a synopsis. So I moved to Florida from Long Island, if you can't tell, in 2000. Going back to visit my mom in New York. I'm really close to her. I'm finding she's becoming more isolated and she's not going to church anymore and there's not a lot of food in the house, and try to convince her to move by myself or my sisters and brothers, and she's not doing it. Make a long story short, she did move to Florida in June of '06 into a beautiful independent community right up the block from my house, and this was going to be the greatest time in our life. And in October, right after she moved here in June, in October she was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. Not the deal. She had a clean colonoscopy the year before. Anyway, we had a journey. We had this wonderful, wonderful journey. And it was about 3 weeks ago. I was living with her in the end when she became very ill. And I tucked her into bed one night, and she said to me, "Good night and God bless." And I thought that was the last night I was going to hear it. And I was in her living room that night praying, "Please, God, give me a little bit longer. I'm not ready." And she woke up the next morning looking good. So I started writing Good Night and God Bless that day. And I wrote through the last 3 weeks of her life in my grieving process. And then I reconstructed our adventure from the year before through my calendars and my journals. And the book was published right away. And when I went out to promote it, every time people came up to me crying that they needed help. And nobody told me about squat when I took care of my mom. And I'm not a dumb bunny, but you don't know what you don't know. So that's my mission now. Yeah,
it is amazing. And I'm sure you talk with a zillion people just like I do, through your radio show and your blog and your workshops and stuff. Whose caring journey has changed their lives, and they struggle. They all struggled, and they all want to make it better for the next guy. I mean, I know that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I didn't even know dementia existed. I was happy in my world of real estate, and then it was like, nobody deserves this kind of pain and this kind of isolation. Just, it's not right. It's not humane.
Talking about those purple restaurants before. The purple. Okay, so Seminole, the town I live in Florida, is the first dementia-friendly city in Florida.
Cool.
So we went out and we educated the businesses, and we had the first responders go to the USF Bird Institute in Tampa and be re-educated because people were getting Baker acted all the time. That was not necessary.
Oh, I want you to explain to people what the Baker process is, because not every state has that, or people aren't. What I found when I travel around the country is not everybody understands that process.
I know, and they call different things in different states. Some it's called people in need of supervision or whatever. But Baker acting in Florida is so. For instance, 3 weeks ago, one of my clients, one of my caregivers, is in the home with her husband, and he starts freaking out, and he takes a golf club and breaks the mirrors in the living room because there's some old guy looking at him. You know that story?
Yeah.
She doesn't know what to do. She's afraid. And so the police department come and the fire department, and they say that he has a mental condition. And they Baker act him, and they put them apart from everyone into a hospital for like 3 days, take everything away from them. They don't know what the heck's going on. So I'll tell you, if they weren't crazy before, they're crazy now.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle. So we had to educate the first responders to get more information before they're Baker acting somebody. And it's been huge because it's gone down like 50%.
Oh, that's
but
good.
also in the restaurants, what I was saying too, in the restaurants, certain restaurants have a certain area of the restaurant and there's purple tablecloths on those tables, so you know that's where to go. And there's no, like, salt and pepper shakers or any stuff on the table to be distracting. And there's no music being piped into their ears that's distracting. And it's near the bathroom. And the staff that waits on those people are the most patient staff that have been trained better. And you could even call the restaurant beforehand and order your loved ones, order your meals, order your loved one's food. And when your loved one's food comes out, it's already cut up. So you're not, so you can have a nice dinner and no one's being embarrassed or feeling uncomfortable. It's like the bomb. You do that everywhere.
They may want to talk with the Purple Tables people because they have an actual app, and it might increase their business for people to be able to find these places because they're gold mines. They're just gold mines. I remember with my mom, we had to keep switching up when we would go out. First she could order, then she couldn't order. Then we went to buffets. Then she had 5 plates going on one buffet, and that got too confusing. And then I would get her her food, but she didn't really like not being involved. And then finally we got down to ordering, and I would ask her, can we get 2 things and we'll share it? Because sometimes she'd order something and then she didn't remember she ordered it.
Can't eat it.
And then she'd be upset. But she was always willing to do me a favor, and then we'd share. And then, it was a fun thing. But I love the concept of the dementia-friendly Purple Tables. I just think that that's amazing. Yeah. And it doesn't cost restaurants much to participate. And I think the value for the community is huge, absolutely huge.
Well, I'm going to tell all my friends to go there. I'm going to go, this place is great. Look what they're doing for these other people. Just be kind to one another.
I was going to say in the UK, I don't know if you heard this, but there is a new restaurant, and I can't remember the name of it, but where the servers and the cooks, my understanding is, has dementia. And so they call it the restaurant that makes mistakes.
I love that.
But it's being embraced by the community. Because you know what? We all screw up a meal. I mean, I do anyways, and I think most of my friends do too. And it's okay. And then to know that you're empowering somebody who's got a disability, that's a pretty cool thing. And it's empowering for them. It's a really neat concept. So I told them I need to get them on the radio show. It might be somebody you want to get hooked up with as well to help spread the word, because I think that's very cool as well. Now, in your book, I was digging through it, and there was one thing that just kind of hit me, and it was a chapter called All I Want for Christmas. And I just thought, with the holidays around the corner, I wonder if you can give people little insights into that chapter.
And I've learned more since that chapter because I've learned more about dementia. So the first thing I would like to say is, it was around last Christmas, a woman came to my support group. She had just moved down to Florida from North Carolina. Her mom had passed away because she burned herself out as a caregiver. Mm-hmm. And the dad had Alzheimer's, and she didn't even know her dad had Alzheimer's. The mom didn't even tell her. She had been diagnosed like 6 months ago. So she's got a lot to learn. And she says to me, I'm going to make this the best Christmas ever, and I'm going to deck out the house with lights in every room and Santa and this. And I was like, whoa. I don't think you really want to do that. So it could be very distracting to your dad, And she was like, what? But if you don't know, you don't know. So she said, well, I really want to make it special. What can I do? And I said, is he still eating well? And she said, he eats like a horse. I said, just make all his favorite meals. Whatever you had when you were younger, make his favorite meals. I said, tell me something you used to do with him when you were a child. Well, we used to go fishing, but that was out of the question. But they played Parcheesi all the time. I said, bring the Parcheesi board. And I said, and after dinner, pull out the photo albums. And she said to me, Linda, he's not going to know anybody in the pictures. And I said, I don't care. Pull them out. So I met her a couple of weeks after Christmas, and she said, he ate every drop of food. She said, he kicked my behind in Parcheesi like 10 times. She said, and I told you he wouldn't know anybody in the pictures, Linda. She said, but guess what? He knew every car. It was a 1950 Chevy or, whatever it was. And as she said it out loud to me, she said to me, I don't even know if he was telling me the truth. Who cares?
Yep.
Who cares? You just wanted to have a delightful time with your dad.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do. Caregivers come to my support groups, and their loved one passes away, and they come back because they're still part of the group, and they want to share with other people. But their biggest regret is that during their caregiving experience, they were just too task-focused.
Mm-hmm.
They were worried about, are you eating? Are you pooping? Are you taking your medicine? That they didn't spend the time to sit down and talk. Sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Just hold your loved one's hand. Touch them, please.
Yeah, just be in their presence. It's not, Harry Urban, I love, one of the comments he made, and it just makes so much sense, and we all overlook it so often. And he says, I love to relax before I got dementia. I still do. Revel in my contentment. Join me on my journey.
Yeah.
Instead of, keeping me busy or keeping yourself busy. Sit and feel the breeze on your face. Listen to the birds, or the music, smell the bread baking. Whatever it is, just take it in.
I can remember one time my mom being at my house, and I was in my office, and she was in the den watching TV. She was watching Judge Judy, so my mom had something to say about everything. And I walked in the room, and she was just staring at her hands. And I was like, Mama, what? And she said, I'm just looking at these old, ugly arthritic hands. And they were pretty messed up. Now, normally I would have said, oh, Mama, those hands are just fine. Or, oh, Mama, here's some hand cream. But I know my mother doesn't have a lot of time. So I sat down and I took her hands in my hands. And I was like, Mom, besides how many dishes these hands washed, and how many clothes, my mother didn't get a washing machine till the fourth kid. I remember washing them in the kitchen sink and hanging them out on the clothesline. I said, Mom, these hands have combed my hair and wiped my tears, hold my daughter and hold my grandchildren. So these hands gave me a good whack on the family when I deserved it, Mama. These are the best hands in the world. And just so softly, she said to me, thank you, Linda. And that was one of the most profound moments in my life. And it took me 60 seconds.
Yep. But you went back to
seconds.
all those important touch points of how you were connected and how much you appreciated her and what she's given. And that it's not about our exterior. It's about who we are in our inner soul level and how we've cared for one another. And we don't have those conversations near as much as we need to.
If I could give one other tip for the holidays, I find lots of times with caregivers, and I know this was happening with me and my mom, people don't know what to say, so people stop calling, people stop stopping by. My mom's dying. People don't know what to do. And that's terrible for her. So we had gone on a cruise, and when we went on the cruise, and I'm going to buy every picture on the cruise because these are going to be the last pictures in her life. And the last night, it was my sister and my cousin and my daughter. They dressed us both in like those old-fashioned outfits. And here's my mother in this old-fashioned outfits with like this rifle with like a scowl on her face. And when they printed out the picture, they put it on a wanted poster. Wanted $10 million reward or whatever. So I took that photo, and I downloaded it on like 50 greeting cards, and we sent it to all her friends up north and here. And so there she is on the front of the card, and when you open it up, it said, Dear Mary, got in a little trouble in Mexico. Please pray for me. Love, Joe. And Lori, I said, if we sent out 50 cards, 48 people called. Because we didn't talk about the cancer. We didn't talk about my mother dying. We laughed. And then we reminisced a little bit. So sometimes caregivers, I know you're like so busy and everything, you got to reel your people in. You got to tell them how they can help you or how they can get back in with you because they don't know what to do either.
Well, one of the things that about the story you're just telling is, it was about joy and it was about silliness. And I think back to, there's one of my favorite pictures of my mom is all decked out with this red boas. She's got red lipstick on and probably a little bit too much blush. And, she's got a red outfit. That red was her color. And she has the biggest smile on her face and the biggest glint in her eyes. And she's having so much fun because they all dressed up for kind of the red hat lady thing. And my brothers looked at that picture in disgust and said, you shouldn't be playing with Mom and making her up. She's not a child. And I said, look at this picture. She is happy. She is having fun. Mom always liked dressing up for the holidays or whatever. If there was an event, she'd be the first one to get a costume on.
And Lori, maybe that's just brothers. They don't get about dressing up and being silly.
Well, but I think people in general don't feel that you can laugh. I mean, so many people think, well, if you laugh, you're laughing at them. No, you're laughing with them. Expand the joy. I mean, there's a big difference between laughing at somebody and laughing with somebody, and really opening up to be able to feel their joy. And so, so often I think people accept the fact that if let's say you're in a room and everybody's kind of peaceful and everything's okay, and then one angry person walks in the room, or they're frustrated. Maybe you're at a meeting. It doesn't make any difference. Or church, it doesn't make any difference where. Right. But everybody can feel the tension from that person's energy
in a minute.
In a nanosecond. And yet we don't talk about the same thing can happen with joy if we let it, if we recognize it, and we have to learn. Joy looks different sometimes when people are dealing with an illness, or chronic illness, or dementia, or pain, whatever it might be. Joy might look different, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we have to teach people to find that, and then we can feel that. I think that Alive Inside movie with the music shows that really clearly. Yeah. One person after another, where staff and family are shocked that somebody's engaging, and then you can see the smiles on their face because they're kind of apprehensive at first, and then it just changed the whole energy of the room. And so joy has just as much power, if not more, but we have to train people to look for it.
A few years ago, I was having a tough time. I had custody of my grandchildren, whatever, and I was waking up in the morning feeling cranky. I don't want to be cranky. So I live on a beautiful lake, so I made this deal with myself. I'm going to get up a half hour early. I'm going to go out. I'm going to walk my dog. I go out on the dock. I say a prayer and say, tell me what to do today because I don't have a clue. And then I take a picture of the sunrise or a bird or a duck or a flower or whatever. And as I'm walking, I post it on Facebook and I say, good morning, Seminole. I then email it to my stepmother who lives in New York City. She lives by herself. So I just want to make sure she's okay. She has an hour to get back to me. She always says, magnificent, beautiful, you have the eye. So every morning I get a hug from her. And I text it separately to my brothers and sisters. We're getting older. But the thing is, every morning I wake up looking for something beautiful and joyful. And every morning I find it in 15 minutes, whether it's at my home or whether I'm in New York or wherever I am. Yeah. And that starts your whole day out with gratitude and, I don't know, just a clearer vision, I think.
But I think the thing is, you have chosen to consciously care and to consciously look for that and to pull that into your life. And if we aren't conscious, we're just going down the conveyor belt and letting life drive us wherever it's going to be.
Missing everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And to me, that was, my mom had, dementia for 30 years. That was probably one of the biggest gifts, was the one of gratitude, the one of learning to let go of my false beliefs of, a good life had to look like this. It had to include this.
Exactly.
All of that's out the window. And then you learn to appreciate even those detours that frustrate us and go, oh, but I planned this. And then you realize, oh, my gosh, there's some really beauty on this detour if we're open to it. But if we just stay mad, we're not going to see it.
People say, how are you doing? I always say I'm joyful and grateful. And they look at me. Well, years ago when I was going through one of those tough times, people would say, how are you doing? And I would say, I'm hanging in there. And then one day I thought, who wants to be hanging in there? That's terrible. That's a terrible thing to say. So I said, I'm not ever going to say that again. I don't. So I always say I'm joyful and grateful. And some people look at me like, what? And I say, you know what? Some days I'm joyfully challenged, but I'm always grateful.
Yep.
So it's how you look at it.
And, by doing that every time I've talked with you, you really walk that talk. And for somebody on the other side, it always makes me think, am I joyful and grateful? It makes me step back and think, because it's not a common phrase, just like, do you need help? No, I got it handled. It's a purposeful statement.
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah. It's a purposeful statement of what you want your life to be and what you want to give in your life. And like you said, sometimes days are more challenging than others. But you know what? They were before, too. That's what's called life. You can't have a high without a low, So it's that yin and that yang thing. It's not about perfection. It's about accepting and I think really resonating not only with yourself, but with what others want and need and what creates joy. And I remember after my dad died, people said, well, because I had all this extra time because then my mom ended up moving into the nursing home because my dad was there, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, well, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what do you like to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because I
don't
never
know.
I never took that time. And so for
Right.
about a year and a half after my dad died, I started kind of experimenting of, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I like? Because I don't have a clue, because I have not focused on it in, many, many years. And
Right.
and so, but instead of spinning in it, I had to explore it and look at it in a positive light of, what can I do? There's no limits. I just have to figure out what it is. I have to be open
And you've
to
proven
that.
it, and so have I. It's just be open to the possibilities.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Be open to the possibilities, and know, I say this all the time, people think it's kind of weird, we're all the same schmoes. We want our health. We want to be loved. We want a roof over our head. We want a couple of nice things. We may have different hobbies or interests, but basically we're exactly the same. And when you realize that, it opens up so much more to you.
Yep. Well, and what's interesting, too, I don't know if you found this, but I mean, for me, like Alzheimer Speaks has gotten so much bigger than what I even ever imagined it could be,
right.
Or collaborating with people and even talking with people, out of the country.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't do that before. I had an expansive, group, and I was very successful in my real estate. I had a lot of different circles of friends, but this elevated to a whole different level that couldn't have even imagined. But I think so often we don't talk at, as individuals or society at large, at what brings you joy. Then work doesn't seem like work.
Right.
You want to be in that space, and that's a huge thing, and that's a good, healthy thing for us too, because it alleviates. I don't carry near the stress that I used to. I don't make as much money as I used to, but I love what I do.
But I'm happy.
And exactly, and you can't buy that.
No.
You can't buy that. Well, Linda, this has just been such a fun conversation with you. We have about 7 minutes left, and I want you to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about your radio show, Connecting Caregivers Radio, so that they can learn a little more about that as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that would be great. So I have a radio show called Connecting Caregivers Radio that started, it's a little over a year and a half ago. It's a weekly show. It's on AM. It's in Tampa Bay area, on AM and FM. It's also live on my Facebook page, Linda Burhans, and all the podcasts are at connectingcaregiversradio.com. So you can go there and see all the shows, the past shows. There's always a photo of the guests on the show and their contact information. But one of the things I would like to say, and I would like your listeners to participate in this, we have a contest every month for caregivers, because I am the gal who cares for the caregivers. That's my title, kind of. I want to be the resource, the educator, and the shoulder for the caregivers. So we have a contest. So you can go to connectingcaregiversradio.com, and you can nominate a caregiver. And you just tell a little bit about the caregiver and just a couple of sentences. And when we first started the contest, we thought, we're going to have to pick a winner. Well, you know what? Every single one is a winner to me. There's no picking a winner. So we put them all in a basket, and we pull the one out, and they follow the next month. But the caregiver gets 8 hours of respite care. In the Tampa Bay area, we have 3 different locations, but we also have relationships with people in other states now where we can do the same thing. And they'll get a massage and a facial and a haircut and a restaurant gift certificate, whatever kind of stuff that we can get for them. And I just think it's so important to acknowledge the caregivers and what they do. And I find when someone wins the contest and we call them up, they're like, oh, my goodness, no one's been this nice to me in 2 years. Or they say, do I have to do everything in one day? I was like, no, honey. This is for you to have a good time. And if I could say to your listeners today, anybody that's listening, just do something nice for a caregiver today. Call them up, tell them what a great job they're doing. Make a dinner and just bring it over there. Make an appointment for them to get a massage and tell them you have to do this. Just do something. And if they've been kind of vague with you, like maybe you can spend some time with my loved one, call them up and say, next week I have this time available and that time available. Can I come and spend some time with your loved one? They'll be so happy. And it'll be a great thing for you, too.
Exactly.
It'll be a great thing. And when you spend that time, just get some stories, especially during the holidays. everyone has a story. I had someone interview my mom the last 6 months of her life. My mom never knew money was involved. She would have had a stroke. And she's like, why does somebody want to interview me, Linda? And I said, just for the fun of it, Mama. So the day of my mother's memorial, the woman brings me 10 CDs of my mother. One is on her faith, when she sings the silly little songs when we were kids, one with me, my daughter, my sister, whatever. And so I met the woman like 3 months later, and I said, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much this means to me. I can hear my mom laughing. If I'm having a tough day, I put that CD and my mom starts laughing. I'm like, get over it, Linda. And so I said to her, by the way, do you know I'm writing a book? And she said, by the way, do you know I'm an editor? And she interviewed everyone in my book.
Wow.
It was like, oh my goodness. I was like, so it's been an amazing journey, and my mother is so happy that I talk about her every day. I want to say to your listeners, look for the resources. There's a lot more resources out in the community now than it was just even 2 years ago. Be open to the possibilities. Know that you're not alone. I sometimes I'll do a caregiver support group, and for a half hour we'll just laugh because caregivers do some pretty silly things.
Yeah.
Some of the stories we tell each other, we're like, what the heck? I did that too. And then you just feel better. Please don't take away from your loved one what they can still do, because we take things away from our loved ones because it's easier for us. So, for instance, let's say cutting up a fruit salad. You could probably cut up a fruit salad in 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. For your loved one to do it, it might take them an hour, but it's still something they can do. So just do that with them. Maybe just have some conversation. It may take a little longer to cut up the fruit salad, but it will be more worthwhile. Because if you take everything away from them, then they're not going to do anything. Then they're just going to sit in a chair, and you're going to go, how come they're not doing nothing? Because you took it all away from them.
I think we're all guilty of that, because everything's run on a time schedule, and it is very important to be inclusive. So people can go to your radio show to www.connectingcaregiversradio.com. That's connectingcaregiversradio.com. And then your website is lindascaregiverconnections.com, lindascaregiverconnection.com, and her email is also listed as lindaburhans@aol.com, along with her phone number, so you can find that right on the radio page or the blog, whatever you happen to be looking at the moment. That is all right there, and should be hot linked for you as well. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and please share this show with others. Linda would love to have you check out her radio show and her website, or if you're looking for a speaker, she would love to talk to you about that as well. And know that you can always go to alzheimerspeaks.com for all of our resources as well. Have a wonderful holiday season. And again, thank you so much, Linda. Appreciate your time with us today.
God bless you, and have a delicious day.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sylvester here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.